everyone and welcome back to another Warhammer Kill Team Battle Report, and today's going to be the last one with the training wheels on, or like half falling off at this point I guess. We are going to do the final alternative op from the starter booklet, so we're doing a kind of conflated crit op and kill op combined, no tac op, but this will be the last time. We'll try it proper with everything in place next time. But we do have two new kill teams for the video today. It's not going to be Angels of Death and Plague Marines. It is the Phobos strike team going up against the Gellerpox infected. So basically it's still Space Marines versus Nurgle, but they're in two different flavours. And today we are using an official layout from the approved ops pack for the Volcus terrain. This is just number 1, and it uses larger deployment areas for both sides. It is 6 inches in on the left and the right, which does kind of answer a question I had last time about there seeming to be more fighting if you use the setups provided in the starter booklet. I think that's on purpose. You have very small deployment zones in the starter booklet and you're very close together, and I think it forces fighting quicker than a standard game would. In this way we've got quite a large distance between the kill teams, but the terrain is better spaced out as well. As far as the 3 objectives on the map go, incidentally, there's one hidden here behind this, there's one in this building, and there's one in this building as well. And we actually have some nice 3D printed things that show the control radius around each, so you'll see those as we go. But let's start with taking a look at both sides. Oh, and as a reminder, this series is available early to channel members, so hello channel members and thank you. Oh boy, more Space Marine names to remember. So this is the Phobos strike team. These are your more stealthy kind of jack of all trades. Well, they're not jack of all trades I guess, because that's a bog standard Space Marine. These guys prefer to be a bit more agile, a bit more covert, and are being led by the Reaver Sergeant. They're being joined by just a bog standard Reaver, what's the full name? Reaver Warrior. It's always Warrior for some reason in this game. We then have the Infiltrator Helix Adept. He is a medic. Then here, this model here is going to be representing the Incursor Mine Layer. This is his mine, which you'll hopefully get the chance to plant at some point. This model here is going to represent the Incursor Marksman. It's just a slightly better bog standard Marine essentially. He has a Stalker Marksman Bolt Carbine. And then finally, this gentleman over here that's tossing the smoke grenade, he is representing just a bog standard Infiltrator Warrior. Let's see, equipment wise, they're bringing Purity Seals. That's exactly the same as it was for the Angels of Death. Combat Blades, which just replaces their bog standard fighting with fists with knives. The only difference is 1 extra attack. Other than that, the stats are the same, but hey, it's 1 extra attack die, so seems fine. They're bringing special issue ammunition, so once per turning point when a friendly Phobos strike operative is performing the shoot action and you select a bolt carbine or a marksman bolt carbine or an Oculus bolt carbine, which is the weapons they can all take, you can use this rule, and if you do, until the end of a turning point, you have piercing 1 by default. Not even piercing crits, just piercing 1. And then finally from Universal Grenades, they are taking 2 frag grenades, which are the ones for dealing with groups, because they have Blast 2, and the Gellerpox are a bit of a horde army, as we're about to see. So I think that covers everything they're taking. We'll hopefully remember all their faction rules. Oh, and on the note of faction rules, let's cheat and look at that. They've got the Astartes, well, I always say Astrates, it's Astartes. They have the Astartes rule, so it's exactly the same as Angels of Death. They have the Terror rule, so you have to spend 1 extra APL to use a pickup marker action, although that's not going to be relevant here I think. They have an Omni Scrambler, which only applies if you have an Infiltrator or Voxbreaker I think, so that's not going to matter either. Whenever a friendly Incursor operative is shooting, enemy operatives cannot be obscured, and that's from the multi-spectrum array. So as far as Incursors, that's just the Marksman and the Mine Layer, so that rule only applies to them. So over here we have Nurgle's answer to what is a personified computer virus. This is the Gellerpox infected. They have a lot of weird names. I'm going to cheat and look at the app to read those out. Some of these we'll talk about in a second, because that's actually equipment over there. The Gellerpox themselves is these 4 large lads, 3 medium lads, and 4 adorable glitchlings, who I guess I've just covered there. We are being led by Vulgar Thrice Cursed. This is him here, he's cooking bread in his stomach. Then we have the Bloat Spawn, which is this guy with the tentacle and kind of nautical theme going on. Then we have the Flesh Screamer. He has a lot of faces on his belly screaming, so that's the easy way to remember him. Then we have the Lumberghast, and he's becoming a fly creature. and has a big claw hand, and he likes charging into people for some free wounds. None of them have ranged weapons, I think. Oh wait, no, I think the boss has a ranged weapon. Yes, in fact, when the game starts, you have to pick a couple of rules for, oh, not for his ranged weapon, but he fires bile from his belly. But yeah, you do have to pick a couple of rules for his close combat rather. So then we have 3 mutants, 1, 2, 3. Annoyingly, for simplicity's sake, they are not the same. 2 of them are equipped with improvised weapons. 1 of them is equipped with a heavy axe and frag grenades. So the axe is this one here. So he's the one there. And they have group activation. So does the glitchlings, which means when you activate one, you must activate another if you are able. Everybody in the group has 2 EPL as well, so they'll be doing less per action than the Space Marines, but there are obviously more of them. The glitchlings are super small. If they're in cover with an obscure, you can't target them unless you're within 2 inches. They're just there to be a nuisance. And as far as faction equipment, one of their faction equipment involves taking extra units, which are just kind of there to also be nuisances. You can take up to 2 of this faction equipment, which gives you a total of 4 extra models, and they've taken 2 sets of 2 sludge grubs. These explode into poison when they die. So that's just there to be a nuisance. As far as the other equipment goes, they are taking a heavy barricade because all these lovely large lads, even if they have an obscure order, if they're in cover, they can still be shot at. You still get the cover, but you can be targeted. So they're pretty rough in that regard. As far as the final bit of gear, what was it called? Plague Bellows. So if a Nightmare Hulk, which is what it calls the 4 large lads, are being shot at from more than 6 inches away, they can keep 1 defense roll of 3+ as a success instead of discarding it, because normally they only have 5+ saves, I think. But they have like 20 wounds, so that's kind of like the offset. Same as the Plague Marines, they also have that 4+, disgustingly resilient, although I think it's called something else, but it's the exact same thing, to reduce damage received by 1 for damage dice of 3 or more. So I think that about covers it. We'll get both sides set up and be back after this quick word from my channel sponsor. This video is sponsored by Noble Knight Games. Check out the video description below for an affiliate link that will take you through to their store, and it will help me out as well. Thanks. And we're back with both sides set up. It was the Phobos strike team that won the roll-off. They'll be taking first action in Turning Point 1. In terms of where they're set up, they have 3 down here behind this terrain, and the other 3 are up there. The Reaver Sergeant, Reaver, and the Marksman are up there. The Helix Adept, the Healer, the Mine Layer, and then the box standard Infiltrator Warrior are all down there. With so many bodies, the Gellerpox infected are using as much terrain for cover here as they can, but they're little grub worms they brought for cannon fodder. There's 2 in the open there and 2 in the open up there. A note about them is that they do not contribute towards the kill op usually in their rolls, so we're going to apply that here as well. And they can't contest objectives, they can't claim objectives, that kind of stuff. They're there to be a distraction or to explode on you and do some chip damage. They don't have much attacks, they don't have much damage, they have a poor chance to hit, so they're nuisances, much like the glitchlings. But to go over how we're scoring, this is called Initiate Transmission, which is, as I say, the last alternative op from the starter rulebook that we haven't done yet. So it gives you access to the 1 AP action to initiate transmission, 1 objective marker. The active operative controls is transmitting until the start of the next turning point. You can't perform this action in the first turn, or while within the control range of an enemy operative. And as I said at the top, there's 3 potential scoring conditions. Also, you receive 1 victory point every time you kill an enemy, except the ones who say they don't contribute towards kills. You receive 1 victory point at the end of the game if you've killed more than the enemy. You receive 1 victory point at the end of each turning point at which you've transmitted at least 1, so if you've done 2, that's still fine. You just get the 1 victory point, though it's not 1 per. However, you do also receive 1 victory point at the end of each turn if you have transmitted more. So if you had all 3, you would still only claim 2. 1 for at least getting 1, and 1 for having more. So, hope that's clear. With that, let's jump in and see how this plays out with like the full table length between both sides. One side having way more bodies, less APL per body though, and group activations. It's going to be interesting, and we'll hopefully remember as many of the little rules as we can. So here's a view from the Phobos strike team side of the table, because they started the game. It was the Marksmen who activated. Forgot to mention they all have 3 APL, same as like bog standard Space Marines. They are faster than your bog standard Space Marine, though they all move 7. And the Reavers also have the ability to treat any height that they're climbing up as 2 inches, even if it's more than that, thanks to their grapnels. And they also have what are they called? Some fancy backpack thing where they don't count any falling as contributing to taking away from their move. Grav shoots, that's what they're called. Anyway, the marksman, who is not a reaver, he had to climb and got him like here. He then did a dash and he's hiding in there, prepping for next turn. First activations for the Gellerpox were two of the grubs, the sludge grubs, sorry, that's their full name. They only move 4 inches. They have 2 EPL. Actually, they're not allowed to use dash, are they? There's a lot of actions they are not allowed to use. I think if they're allowed to dash, they're going to be slightly further forwards when you see them, because they're just moving up in a what's known as please shoot me formation, because even if they do get shot, they're not worth points, and to shoot them, the Phobos would have to come out of conceal, making them a target for the very limited, granted, ranged options the Gellerpox have in the form of the grenades from the mutants and the stomach cannon from the boss who's hiding behind their heavy barrier there. They are allowed to dash, so they'll be moved up, and I totally forgot to announce a couple of things you've got to cover for the Gellerpox. You have to choose a techno curse for them to be spreading, and they're picking Screaming Rust Spikes, so when they get into close combat we'll cover that, but essentially it makes the hand-to-hand weapons of the enemy turn on them and start to like hurt them, which is kind of cool. So that's what they'll be doing. Also for the engineered weapon on the boss, you have to pick a couple of rules, and the 2 that were selected were Brutal and Lethal 5+. So hopefully we'll remember that. The normal Reaver activated for the Phobos, hopped up over the wall and just got over here, did a dash just to get right against the wall up here. On Objective 3, or rather in the control radius of Objective 3, which is right there, slightly out of view but on the floor there. Can't do anything with it this turn, can't score this turn, but just staking a claim. 2 more Koi activations for the Gellerpox, just activating the other 2 grubs. One of them is actually so small you can't see him, he's behind there, but the other one's there. They did a 4-inch move and then a dash, so in total that's Nurgle's number, and that's where they ended up. The Helix Adept activated, and using that 7 inches, just lost 2 to hop up over the wall, come over here. You can see over this barricade, he's within 2 of it, so it's not providing any cover, and he decided to shoot at the grub that's in the open, because the conceal doesn't matter if you're in the open. It's not obscured by this corner here, it wasn't close enough to it. Shot at him, and they have a 6+ save and 2 wounds, so you just need 1 good hit to get through. The bog standard weapon for infiltrators, by the way, is basically the bolter profile, with the exception that instead of piercing crits, they have lethal 5+, which just means that 5s are also crits. So more than enough damage to a 2-wound model that this grub here has been popped. Doesn't contribute to the kill, just means he can't do that right next to someone to hurt them, but that's okay. It made him go in a aggressive order, an engage order, so we'll see if we can do anything with that. A group activation of 2 glitchlings occurred next, again 2 APL, 6+ save, 3 wounds on a glitchling, but if they have a conceal order and they're in cover, they just cannot be targeted, and they're actually immune to like someone being on vantage and other rules that would normally circumvent that. So one of them went through a door, there is a door right against the wall here that they're all lined up against to, ended up there, and the other one has just taken cover behind this scenery here. The Reaver Sergeant activated, just taking 2 inches to hop up here, moving over here, and is just ending behind the marksman underneath this terrain here. I forgot to mention, but both Reavers are using the pistol knife setup. That seems to be the best option. Their alternative is just having their fists, or I guess knives if you take the upgrade, plus a bolt carbine, but the heavy bolt pistol seems decent. It's just got a limited range. 2 mutant activations for the Gellerpox. They were both against the door that's on this side of this structure here, and they just went through it and are hiding a bit behind this here. Just being a little bit cautious. There's an objective right over here, so they're just getting in a position for the turning point in which it can actually be scored. Already at the second last activation of the first turning point for the Phobos strike team, although they obviously have options for counteracting if they present themselves. The mine layer activated, did a dash, did a move, and has nestled himself under there, also facing down objective 1. You have to place the mine within control range, so ideally you want to do it in a turn in which you can also dash away. He doesn't set it off, but he could be caught in it, and friendlies can also set it off too. The final mutant for the Gellerpox infected activated, did a move and a dash to get right onto the middle of objective 2. Group activation would kick in, meaning you would have to activate another one. The other 2 have already activated in that particular category, so it just ends as activation. And the Infiltrator Warrior has simply moved up to be next to the Helix Adept, who can keep him alive and or heal an adjacent person once per turning point. And he's just going to chill there. So that is it for the Phobos, unless they opt to counteract. So we might be back with a bunch of movement done, but we'll cover all that as it happens. The final two glitchlings activated. One was right here and has moved in here to be with the mutant on objective 2, and the other one did a move and a dash. You won't be able to see him, but he's against the wall roughly here-ish, just after moving along the top of the map. Nobody can see him or is choosing to activate against him. The first of the Plague Hulks activated, it was the Lumberghast. Did a move and a dash, getting him right there, and the Helix Adept has counteracted against him. It seems like Nightmare Hulks are still affected by obscuring, even if they don't get like the inability to be targeted with a conceal order in cover, because part of the building here, although actually it's within 2 of them, so maybe that wouldn't have applied. Doesn't matter anyway, because his rolls were pretty good. Normally needing a 5+, but Plague Bellows kicked in because the Helix Adept is more than 6 away, and that meant 1 3+ counted as a successful save for him. So that was 0 damage done to the Nightmare Hulk. No more counteraction opportunities presented themselves, so that's all the activations done. The final 3 Nightmare Hulks have activated and moved. Every single one of them was a reposition plus a dash. The one that has the aquatic theme going on, I've forgotten his name. Is that the... Oh, you know, I'm just going to look it up to get the Bloatspawn. That's the one. I was going to say the right name. Bloatspawn ended up over there. The Vulgar Thrice Cursed has just gone straight down the middle and is there with his glitchlings and the Bloatspawn. And then finally the Flesh Screamer. Is that the one? The Flesh Screamer, yep. Decided to follow him behind and just create this wall of meat charging straight down the centre. Yeah, they're going to get shot at, but they better do some damage before they get in close. So that takes us to the end of the first turning point. And with the first of 4 turning points complete, the only casualty was one of those grubs, which is not counting towards the kill op. There is no scoring of the main objectives yet. They only activate from turn 2 onwards, so the next turn they will become available to do the transmission, the initiate transmission action. And it's going to get very messy. The Phobos strike team are going to want to do as much damage as possible before the massive muscle is upon them, but also want to secure those objectives, obviously. So yeah, with that we'll go into seeing who's going to get the role and see if any strategic ploys are being played. So at the top of turning point 2, the roll-off gave the Gellerpox the win. The Phobos Sergeant, the Reaver Sergeant rather, for the Phobos, used their tactical advantage, which gives them a couple of things they can do once per game, one of which is re-roll their initiative die to try and seize it. They really wanted it, did not help, so they will be going second. Both sides are using 1 strategic ploy each. Phobos Strike Team has spent 1 command point on lethal assaults. It's when they're fighting in close combat, they have the balance roll for a single reroll, and if it's a turn in which they also charged first, they get lethal 5+ on their knives. The Gellerpox are doing Plague-Ridden Determination, which is if they are being shot at while they have an engage order, it gives them a reroll on 1 defense die. None of them really, no, literally none of them have an engage order yet, but through the turn I'm sure they will end up with some. So, with the first activation of the Gellerpox infected in Turning Point 2, there are some horrible things going on in the shadow underneath that building, so we're going to have to talk about that. The Bloatspawn activated for his first APL, he did a charge action, so a reposition plus 2 inches to get into close combat. Second APL being used to fight the mine layer. However, when he does a charge action, the Bloatspawn gets to do D3 damage. That's why there's already wounds there. He managed to get the full 3, so that's pretty good. He didn't do super great with his roll. He only rolls 4 dice hitting on 4s, but he does massive damage. It's a 6-9 split, I think. No, 6-7 with brutal, meaning you can only block with crits. So he got 2 successes through. The mine layer has that knife upgrade that all of them have from one of the faction equipment. So he's rolling 5 dice hitting on 3s. So he did very well. He doesn't have any crits though, and that's going to cost him, because this is getting resolved for 6 damage, leaving him on 3. And all he can do really is block. He can't block rather, because there's no crits to block with. So all he can do is do damage and then receive 6 more wounds to his face and die. If he'd rolled 1 crit, he would have been able to block off that second attack and get through the rest of these regular hits. I don't think there's any shenanigans that they have to get a crit with anything they rolled. We'll just go double check real quick, because it matters, because it's whether or not he dies. Oh, unlucky. The only thing they could have done was transhuman physiology, and that is only if you're being shot that you can turn, or rather you can retain a normal success as a crit. It isn't for when you're fighting in close combat. So we will not be seeing the mine layer doing his mining. Ooh, it's dangerous. Very awkward fighting under buildings in this, especially because the scenery is very slidey on this map. Either way, the mine layer has been killed by the Lumberghast, who doesn't have any APL left, so he can't do anything with the objective, but that is 1 VP for a kill. As a final insult to injury, the mine layer was just outside of 3 of the Helix Adept, who could have kept him alive, but he has to be visible to and within 3, and he was literally just out. That's what he gets for trying to be as close to the objective as possible, because his plan was to lay a mine and then run away. So the mine laying plan didn't work out for the Phobos strike team. They activated their marksman instead, who did a reposition up onto the tallest point available on the battlefield, so anyone on the ground level he's getting accurate 2 against now, I believe. Either way, he hits on 2s, so it doesn't really matter much, and he just started blasting. So he did 2 sets of attacks. It's a bolt weapon, so he's allowed to thanks to the Strates rule. So he first of all just picked off a glitchling because it wasn't in any cover, so the fact it was small and had a conceal order didn't matter, so obliterated him. He's out of there, and I think they do give kill points, the glitchlings. So that is 1 kill there. Then he shot into the leader just as a bulky target to hit, and only got a crit and a hit through, but that was still 7 damage, leaving him on his 14 because he has 21. The rest of the big guys have 20 on the dot. The leader has 21 because he's special, I guess. The surviving 2 glitchlings activated for the Gellerpox. One that started down slightly too high was behind there and has moved up against the wall here. The other one was sitting on objective 2. They can do stuff with objectives, so he did the initiate transmission on objective 2. So that is at least 1 victory point, and if they end the turn with more transmitting than the Phobos, that'll be another one. The normal Reaver activated for the Phobos strike team, and he ended up where you can see him there, but he did some atrocities on his way. He started down here, he did a dash, so he was between these 2 buildings, and he chucked one of the 2 frag grenades from Universal Equipment that the Phobos took. Behind here, so you'll just have to take my word for it, there's a grub right next to a glitchling. They were within 2 inches of each other, so the blast 2-inch rule caught them both, and well, one has a 6+ save, one has a 5+ save. And the frag grenade is a 2-4 damage split. Not much damage, but when you're dealing with tiny wounds, it was enough that both of them have been killed. So the grub is not worth any points. It's just another one of the 4 grubs gone. But the other glitchling, though, he is worth a point. So that is 2 out of the 4 glitchlings demised. Vulgar thrice. I was going to say thrice pierced because of the character from Elder Scrolls Call to Arms. Anyway, thrice cursed, whatever his name is, he activated, he moved his 5 inches onto, or within the control radius of the objective and did the initiate transmission. Oh, actually, I think they have to spend 2 EP to do that, so I don't think he can. Yeah, we'll need to double check that. I'm pretty sure they have to spend an extra. Oh wait, that may just be for the pickup action. I think initiate transmission will still be 1. So if it is, that's fine. That's another victory point gained for them there. Well, the rules specify that they have to spend extra AP on the open hatch or pickup marker actions. It also says they're not allowed to do any unique mission actions. Or sorry, just unique actions. So that might mean they can't do the initiate transmission. Maybe they're too dumb. We're going to play it for now that they can, just because... but not sure. Like, presumably the initiate transmission is a unique action, because what else would count as a unique action? But why can they pick up a marker, but for instance not if we were playing loot that we played last time? Why would they not be able to loot when looting is essentially picking up a marker? So that's where the confusion is kind of stemming from. So we're going to play it that they can initiate transmission this time. If that's wrong, we'll obviously change in the future. The Helix Adept Medic did a dash to get himself right there so he could see the big boss of the Gellerpox infected himself, and just blasted him over 2 sets of attacks with his Marksman Bolt Carbine, 4 dice on 3s, 3-4 split with lethal 5+, and he was within 6, so no Plague Bellow, 3+ save, so it was a 5+ save. First set of attacks was actually pretty bad, and made use of Purity Seals, so that's their one use this turn up to turn 2 6 or get rid of 2 fails and turn 1 into a success, and didn't do much damage. Second set of attacks though, a crit and 3 hits got through. Disgustingly resilient, or whatever the Gellerpox equivalent is called. Revoltingly resistantly resilient maybe. Either way, it kicked in 4 times, which actually saved his life. So instead of being dead, he only took, let's see, it would have been 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 wounds. So yeah, he took 10 instead. So he's alive on 4 remaining. He's now injured and in a bad way. The mutant that is using the the heavy axe that has brutal activated, so another mutant is going to have to activate after this, but we're covering all this at once. He was on objective 2 with a glitchling. He did a charge, climbed up, and is engaged with the Reaver, thinking that 3 attacks hitting on a 4+ with 4/5 split damage with brutal would have better results, but unfortunately for him, 5 dice hitting on 3s and getting a crit there kind of scuppers his plans a little bit. So he is definitely resolving the crit just to get in there, which is 5 damage. So that's pretty good, honestly, on a 12 wound model, or 13? 12 wound model, yeah. So that's fine, but the Reaver can block with a crit to counter the brutal, so that crit he did get can get rid of that second hit, meaning that all 4 of those bog standard hits can now just go through unimpeded, and that is, what, 3 damage for each one? Yeah, so that is 12 wounds on a 7 wound model. So unfortunately, it turned out that did not work out. The heavy axe was not good enough. 5 wounds is okay, but not worth giving up a victory point for, so lesson learned there, Reavers are scary. The other mutant that activated as part of that group activation has just hidden himself here, right next to objective 1 that's over the wall there, and there is still the other mutant alive, but you can only ever activate 2 at most, so he'll be activating at some point later in the turning point. Second last activation, I think, second last, I think, for the Phobos was just their bog standard infiltrator warrior who got a lot of work done. He was roughly here next to the Helix Adept. He shot at Vulgar Thrice Cursed to finish him off. 4 dice hitting on 3s with lethal 5+, and disgustingly resilient did kick in on the 2 hits that got through after defense rolls, bringing 6 damage down to 4, but unfortunately 4 wounds is all he had left. So that is the leader of the Gellerpox gone, and they do have a firefight ploy where they can burst and explode much like the Plague Marines can, but there's no one in range. So then he did a dash and then spent his last APL to obliterate that glitchling over there. Didn't bother putting the dice over there, but he got 2 5+, which turned into crits. There, that was the hits. So they were 5s, but he has lethal 5+, so they became crits, so that alone is just enough to obliterate him. Oh, I did forget to mention, just in case anyone is keeping track of command points, 1 command point was used for a reroll during that set of shooting. A group activation of the 2 surviving horrible grub monsters for the Gellerpox activated together, so we'll just cover where they ended up. The one that was up here did a dash and reposition, is within the control radius of objective 3, but cannot actually interact with it or anything like that. Not that he has the EPL to do so anyway. But the other one that was next to his boss, who just got killed, he has done a a dash and a charge, and is now engaged with the Helix Adept. Doesn't have any APL to initiate an attack this turn, will probably die, but when he does, he'll explode for some free damage, is the goal there. Or the Helix Adept will have to spend 2 EPL to fall back from combat, so just trying to be a nuisance, which is their purpose. So last actual activation of the turning point for the Phobos, barring any counteracting, was the Reaver Sergeant himself, and from where he was up in that window, he shot his special issue heavy bolt pistol at the grub that moved over there, obliterated it, obviously, then did a dash off the ledge. His grab shoot means he ignores the falling radius, or distance rather, and then he initiated the transmission on objective, whatever number is there, is it 3? Yep, 3. So that gives them 1 victory point. The Flesh Screamer activated, did a dash, and then did a charge, having to lose basically what he was gaining from the charge to scale that, but he did get within the control radius of the Reaver up there, so they are now locked in combat, however, can't fight right now. I think, though, he would be allowed to initiate a counteract fight if he wanted to. Going to go check the wording for counteract. I think he would be able to, though, if he wants to. Yep, he absolutely can counteract, so he chose to do fight, and he fought. And unfortunately for the Flesh Screamer, the dice just weren't on his side. He has 2 choices. He can roll a single attack dice that hits on a 3+ and does 8 or 9 damage, or he can roll 5 hitting on 4s for 5-6 damage. So he opted for the latter and got 1 crit through. Ironically, if he'd opted for the other attack profile, that would have been 9 damage. Such as it is though, the Reaver rolled 1 crit and 4 hits, and because he initiated the actual fighting, he is allowed to resolve first. So he is resolving the crit against the crit to parry it, and then that just means those 4 attack dice just go straight through. For how much damage is it for his? It's 4 for each of them, so that is 16 barring any disgustingly resilient rolls. So let's see. Disgustingly resilient. Oh, it procced once. Wow, that's a lot of damage. Second last activation for the Gellerpox was the Bloatspawn, who did a dash, then a reposition. Got him where you can see him, so the Reaver Sergeant counteracted. Remember, you can counteract once per turning point with each model. You can't use the same model again. So he reacted and just shot that special issue heavy bolt pistol into him. Did exceptionally well, and unfortunately got the poor Bloatspawn down to 8 wounds remaining of his 20. Managed to do 12, which is just expected better of the big guys. Let's just put in terms of their tankiness, let's put it that way. So it's over to the single mutant to end off the round. And to just try and make a difference in the fight, the mutant came out from behind the scenery he was hiding behind and has moved on to the control radius for objective 1. And that takes us to the end of the round. So at the end of turning point 2 there, it feels like the Gellerpox infected are just starting to drop like flies. The Phobos strike team have only had 1 casualty. However, the Gellerpox did have the majority of the transmitters taken there, 2 out of the 3. So they got 1 point for just having transmitters, and then 1 point for having more. The kills though on the other side are making up for that more than anything. So as we go into turning point 3, Phobos strike team are ahead 6 playing 3. So at the top of the penultimate turn, the Gellerpox infected have once again won initiative. And oh yes, one more important thing to cover is, unfortunately for that mutant who ended off the last round, he is absolutely in the open and a counteraction could have happened here. So we have rolled it out and he died. So they actually have 7 victory points. That was a big mistake. There was no cover intervening, especially from vantage. So that was just dumb, and well, now he's dead. So anyway, the Gellerpox infected are still going first. In terms of strategy ploys, they used Plague Ridden Determination again to get that, if they have a engage order, they get 1 reroll on their rubbish save. The same strategic ploy, Lethal Assault, was played for 1 command point by the Phobos. They're also paying 1 more for And They Shall Know No Fear. It just means they ignore the hindrances of being injured, i.e. below half health, should that happen. The Flesh Screamer got the round started and went for a Hail Mary. Decided to do the 1 singular attack, because if it gets through, that's enough to kill the Reaver. And normally it would hit on a 3 because of injured, hitting on a 4. But they rolled a 5 and it has lethal 5+, so it becomes a crit. Didn't even roll for the Reaver because there's no point. Flesh Screamer gets to resolve first, puts that crit through, and because they chose the 1 singular attack, that's 9 damage on a 7 wound remaining model. So it managed to cleave the Reaver in twain. It still has another APL, it's just going to retreat onto objective 2, so it'll be down there next time you see it. The Helix Adept activated for the Phobos and fought against the grub it was engaged with. He has a combat knife as well because of that faction upgrade, which as it turns out is really good. 5 dice hitting on 3s. So either way, did a bunch of wounds. The grubs are 4 attacks hitting on 4s with like 2/2 damage, but they do like poison and stuff, I think. Either way, it doesn't matter because he rolled a bunch of 1s and 2s, so it was all misses. So he died. He pops, hits everything within 2. On a 4-up you deal 1 wound. Didn't get it. So he died for nothing, but he's not worth a victory point at least. So the other actions for the Helix Adept was to dash to where you can see him, and the Bloatspawn is under there, I haven't forgotten about him, and shot at him and got a crit, well, a 5 that became a crit because of lethal 5+, and a normal hit through, and he rolled real well with his defense dice, got a 6 and a 5, so no damage to him. So the Bloatspawn, the actual Bloatspawn, I keep on calling the other one over there the Bloatspawn, but that's the something gassed. Either way, I'm very disappointed with his performance. He charged into the Reaver Sergeant and engaged in combat. Obviously he's injured, so he's hitting on worse dice, but his roll was actually fantastic. He got 2 crits and 3 hits through. The Reaver Sergeant's hitting on 3s with that knife of his, so he got a crit and 3 hits through. The Bloatspawn though is 4 damage. The knife on that Reaver Sergeant is 5 damage. So That's really, really rough, especially because he only has 8 wounds left versus 13. So the first thing he's doing is sending that crit in, which is 4 wounds, so, 4 wounds, fine. He gets a crit done back to him for 5, then he sends in another crit, so that's 8, and then a normal wound comes in for 4, and that's 9, and that's him dead. The other way he could have done it was use his crit to get rid of the other crit. Actually, would that have been better? So the first crit goes in, that crit ignores that crit, so that crit goes in for 4. Actually, yeah, that would have been better. Yeah. And then he sends 1 in to block the... Yeah, okay, I did... Yeah, let's do it this way. So that's going to block that. And then this gets sent in. Let it go in, because that's 8 total. No, that's 8 total damage. Has to block it. Oh, but he doesn't need to choose that, though. Yeah, so no matter which way you cut it, either a crit gets through and then he dies, or a crit and a hit gets through and then he dies. So yeah, we'll take the crit and the hit. There's no other way. He's so weak. It's surprising how weak he is versus a little knife that's more damaging. So yeah, he dies in the combat, gives up a victory point, all for 4, 5, 6, 7 wounds to the Reaver Sergeant, who just obliterated him with that knife. I have learned the Lumberghast's name just in time to be disappointed in his death. The Phobos Marksman activated. It's been knocked off center slightly. There we go. And 4 dice hitting on 2s. Lethal 5+, piercing 1. Just absolutely obliterated him. Got 3 crits in his first set of shooting. And 1+3 regular hits on his second. Disgustingly resilient, kicked in a few times, but not enough to save a 20 wound model from, I think it was 30 something damage all said and done across the 2 shooting actions. So unfortunately the Lumberghast is dead, and that's another victory point given up. He did technically have 1 APL left. He's keeping that advantageous position. The lone surviving glitchling that's hiding in this building here with the Flesh Screamer activated and just initiated the transmission for the 1 victory point for at least doing that once in the turn, and is doing nothing else. He's just hiding. The Incursor Warrior activated, did a dash reposition and initiated the transmission on objective 1 there for a victory point. That's their 10th, and the Gellerpox are up to 5, by the way. Well, it's very hard to get an angle on, but the surviving mutant engaged the Infiltrator Warrior with a charge action, then fought him. The Infiltrator's dice is over there. So with his 3+5 dice knife, he got 4 hits through. The mutant did okay, actually. He got 2 crits and 2 normal hits. He just has Ceaseless, which just means you can pick a number and re-roll that number of misses, in terms of, like, they have to have that value. So say you roll 2 2s, you would say, I'll re-roll the 2s. And that lets you do that. So he's a 3-4 split, so he's sending in 4 damage like that. He is taking 4 damage back. It is 4, right? I keep forgetting the knife. Yep, he's taking 4 back, he's dealing another 4, and then he's dead, because he only has 7 wounds. And no disgustingly resilient on him. So, that is it. Although actually, he has a Gellerpox mask. Whenever an attack die would inflict critical damage, you can choose for that attack to do normal damage instead. That doesn't save him, because that would be... No, it would be 1 less, so that's 6. But lets him get 1 more hit through. So sure, he gets 1 more hit through, then he dies. That might matter. That puts the Space Marine kind of low, because that's what, 2 crits and a hit, so that's 8, 9, 10, 11. That's 11. That leaves him on 1 wound. So yeah, that's pretty good. Not great, but he's dead. Last activation of the round was the Reaver Sergeant. He repositioned slightly after doing the initiate transmission. They've already scored a point for capping 1. That's just to give them the majority bonus point as we reach the end of the turning point. So with that to scoring. Who knew hunting knives carried by Space Marines could be so scary? Well, I guess if you play Space Marine 2 you should know, because the knife in that is actually really, really cool. And very powerful feeling against Tyranids. But anyway, yeah, Gellerpox falling like flies. There's going to be a real super quick turning point for it. It's probably going to be a tabling with only the Flesh Screamer, who's heavily wounded, and a Glitchling left for the Gellerpox. Victory points wise, as we go into the final turning point, the Phobos Space Marines have 12 versus the Gellerpox is 5, so there's no way for them to catch up. But hey, we'll play it out real quick just to see if it is a tabling or not. So the top of the almost certainly going to be exceptionally quick turning point. 4 Gellerpox infected, 1 the roll off, and all the same strategic ploys are being played by both sides. So let's just get on with this and see the massacre end. So the last of the Nightmare Hulks, the Flesh Screamer, activated in there and simply did the initiate transmission. Worth noting again, if the Nightmare Hulks haven't actually been allowed to be doing this, then the total victory points are going to be, what, 2 less than what they have been, or 3 less maybe. Either way, we are counting it as they're able to do it this time, so that brings him up to 6. He took a conceal order just to hide. Well, the end came about a lot quicker than I expected because of the Reaver Sergeant. Now, you might be seeing him up there, that's just because it would be an absolute nightmare to put him right under there in the corner. There is a door there. He did a dash, he did a reposition, including an extra inch getting through the door. And so he's in that corner, but outside of an inch of both the Flesh Screamer and the Glitchling that are in there. And he chucked their last frag grenade, and because they are on the kill zone floor in one of these ruins, it gives the grenade, because it has the blast roll, lethal 5+. So with that, got a couple of crits that he otherwise would not have, and has successfully wiped them both out. The 5 wounds was precisely enough after disgustingly resilience to kill the Flesh Screamer, and the Glitchling just got obliterated. So they're both out of there for 2 more victory points. Now the way this works, because that is a tabling, much like Underworlds, the game technically continues because you can reposition and grab objectives. So the only thing that would happen is the grabbing of one of the transceivers, or doing the transmission rather, here. Now let's pull back out to see that. So that would be 1 gained there, and a second point gained for majority at the end of the round. And then also an additional point for having definitely killed more. So we're just going to go straight to some final thoughts because it's obviously over. So the final score is 17 to the Phobos and 6. And that's only if we actually were allowed to do the initiate transmission with the Nightmare Hulks. It's actually 3 if not. Kind of disappointed with the Gellerpox. Maybe it was how I used them, I guess. But the Nightmare Hulks didn't even seem that great in combat once they got into combat. Like, I still can't get over that the bloat spawn, the one that actually is the bloat spawn, not the one I kept calling that, the tentacle guy, like, his damage profile is worse than a Phobos Marine's knife. That just seems very strange. And they all have a 5+ save. They were using that strategic ploy to get a reroll, and outside of range 6, they were, with the Plague Bellows, they were getting 1 3+ save was counting as a save, but they fold like flies. I thought sheer number of bodies alone would mean that the Phobos would get overwhelmed, but Space Marines being able to shoot twice in a single activation certainly helps get rid of models that have 6 or less wounds. So, especially when all their weapons have like lethal 5 and piercing 1. Although Glitchlings are actually immune to piercing, I don't think it mattered. But they actually, because they're demonic, they're immune to piercing, so that might have made a difference. Didn't realise that, but I don't think it did. It's mostly the Nightmare Hulks that I'm disappointed with. I expect the little guys, who you activate 2 at a time, to be able to get killed real easy. So yeah, some of the Nightmare Hulks were very disappointing there. So, it's a shame. The Phobos seem really cool though. The Reavers are very scary, and that knife upgrade just seems like a must-take. Give them all those big knives. 5 attacks, hitting on 3s with 3-4 split, and just even the bolt, they're the heavy bolt pistols, seem really good as well. The only limit is the range. Didn't get to see the mine, which would have been fun, but obviously not needed. It was an absolute stomping. As I said at the top of the video, these are available early to channel members, as a lot of videos on the channel are, as a thank you to those who are willing and able to show extra support. If you are considering becoming a channel member, that is just one of the many perks, and it obviously helps keep the video production coming. You could also check out the channel sponsor instead if you want, via the affiliate link in the description box below. If you buy anything after clicking through from there, I get compensated, which means we both get something. And as long as you're outside of Europe, you can order Games Workshop stuff from them directly. So they have Kill Team, they have everything that Games Workshop does. Or just liking and commenting if you can't afford to do any of that. That just helps as well get it into the algorithm, and that is all great. Either way, thank you very much for watching. Next time when we play, we'll be doing the full proper crit op, tac op, and whichever one I'm forgetting, the primary, kill op, tac op, and crit op. There we go, with one of them being the primary. So more potential points on offer from turning point 2 onwards. Either way, enjoy the rest of your day and see you next time. Ta-ta for now.